To a very final leg of the discussion here on Newsfile, this your most authoritative news analysis show. And my guest, Kukubako, Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide, Clara Berry, Kasati, Dr. Poko Duse, and Yao Opong. Now, I start with Kuku on this note. We have incontrovertible evidence, documents showing that President Mahama, before he exited office, 8 days to handing over the office of the Chief of Staff through the national security, had arrangements to procure vehicles, and these were supposed to be some 43 vehicles for the use of the presidency, especially as it were made, and was going to cost the country $9 million, is it? And now we are told that the vehicles are stuck in Dubai. Why? Is it because Nanado is not interested in them, or what's going on? Kuku.
Well. You said 8 days to the exit of the Mahama administration.
I suppose so, yeah.
The electoral commissioner had already pronounced the verdict.
That's correct.
So he knew he was going out of office, meaning that it was clear that he wasn't going to benefit, quote unquote, please, personally. I just want to find out one thing. The transition team, were they aware? Is this thing captured in the transition report? I'm not sure that report is classified, but none of us has seen it yet.
Right.
So really, because if indeed it was indeed, and that's why I'm having a little difficulty, we need to do some fact checking. I don't have the evidence. Whether indeed the process to purchase these vehicles began 8 days to the exit of that administration, or perhaps it might have happened much earlier.
On the face of the documents, they were executed 8 days to.
Yes, maybe that's why I said we need to do further
because
checking.
There's a letter from the supplier to the national security, and they reply same day, giving the go-ahead.
Yes, so, and the tendering process, the procurement process, even though it's national security, comes under a certain cover, there's still a procurement legal regime for those things. Was it adhered to? Because you see, if you eliminate the issue of a personal, and when I say personal, I'm not talking of as an individual, right, for his own benefit, because obviously it was ordered for the presidency, as you are saying, and that's other affiliates. So it means that it was ordered for the state. When you bring that to the fore, then you must ask the other questions. So is it, if it didn't go to procurement, appropriate procedures, regardless of the fact that it's a security thing, we need to question. If we suspect that the prices maybe had been inflated, or maybe it was some attempt to give somebody business just to make some profit, let's interrogate that. But one thing is becoming clear to me, you know, that the administration then, in this case the president, because he's obviously the government, knew he was exiting. That is taken on face value, what you are telling me. It makes me remember the Kufuor's administration's purchase of the presidential jets, even though that went to parliament. It went through the appropriate procurement thing. And then the building of the Flagstaff House. Jack also knew he was, I'm sorry, President Kufuor. You see what familiarity can do. Knew he wasn't going to really stay there. So you take out that thing about a personal thing. You see that it's the state. Now I don't see how that applies to the presidential directive banning the purchase of new vehicles, because that came before the directive. Mr. Nana Akufo-Addo's, President Akufo-Addo's directive is inapplicable here.
Okay. Because
these things preceded his assumption of power. His directive was that from the advent of my administration, we are not importing for now. Or even if you would do it, then it must be approved. So it's that is inapplicable.
Okay.
So issue of judgment debt, well, you can look at it if the state decides that we don't want them any longer. I'm not sure the government will want to go in that path. if I were asked to advise, I would say that it's been done, it's a fait accompli, bring in those vehicles and give it to the appropriate agencies that were supposed to use them. The only thing I find unfortunate, and I'm not blaming the media, the only thing I know about this is what you're giving to us. That's all I know.
Okay.
I haven't done any checks.
Yeah.
Maybe the security features and specifications should not have been published.
All right.
But you see, who am I? I do things like that. So I'll be sounding hypocritical. If I got this story, I'm sure maybe my voice would have dealt with it the same way, because that's where the meat is. So I am not for one moment blaming the media, but I know that perhaps a little bit of caution would have, informed not publicizing all the features.
Right.
Some of these features get some of the masses angry. You don't win this thing on the streets.
All right. All right.
Because, hey, comfort party.
But apart from comfort, there's, as you say, security features, protection. The cars are capable of firing rounds of ammunition and are designed to withstand the effects of a hand grenade.
Yeah, those things you don't tell, but you see fridges here and there,
Yes.
telephones.
Yes, and video facility.
That's right.
Communication
A home on wheels.
capacity of
Oh, you reminded me. This
what they
one
call the
wheels.
B6 armored vehicles.
Commander Boham, he became a victim during the June 4th days, Yeah, the same thing. Say, hey, disco on wheels, because the sound and all, it was one of the things people used against him.
So Doc, like Oku is saying, well, if you put all of these things out, and because of the amount involved, this is the argument you don't win on the streets, because they say, why are you buying all of this luxury for yourself? But does it not stand to reason that we are able to connect a few things? That as they exit, there were a number of vehicles that people were being asked to buy them, take them away. So they were bringing in a fleet of 43, to sort of replace some of these things. So that may have been the plan. What do you know? Is it really true that the incoming administration was not informed? And if they were not informed, how bad is that to the entire contract? Should they stay away from this contract? And curiously, we understand national security often doesn't engage directly in contracts, in purchases. That's how come in one case we know they have used the NCA rather than the national security directly. Why is it that in this case it's national security that's directly dealing with a supplier?
Well, I believe the uncertainties call for thorough review and investigation of the procurement of those cars. Certain trends are emerging from what occurred in the past administration. It seems even contracts that could be entered into by the government itself or a state institution, or bring on board a private individual, all in an effort to enrich certain persons. So those are issues that have to be gone into, so that if laws were not complied with, the Procurement Act wasn't complied with, then persons who are liable are made to respond to any charges they may have. The other bit also is that review of this is important, because we don't want a situation whereby the cars will not be delivered and the state will incur liability for either a breach of contract or not. But if there is a way out, and that way is consistent with the president's promise and directive that new cars should not be imported into the country, if there's a way out, I believe the president is willing to go by that. But if the hands of the states are tied because of the arrangements in place, and therefore having the cars in place or brought in is the best option, is willing to do what is right for this country, but we will not allow it to be repeated under our government. That is one thing I am worried with. That we had certain, the past government believing in certain ideologies, but it seems those ideologies were given to the dogs, and people were on the frolic of their own, enriching themselves. Recently, I heard a leading female figure saying that they should go back to their route, the social democratic route. It was telling for me that when she sat down and emboldened people to take fraudulent judgments, she's now saying they should go back to their route. Nanado's government will look at the various agreements in place. If this car could be an exception to the general rule, so that it comes in order for the state not to incur any liabilities. So be it. If it can be stopped, he will stop it, because it's not for his comfort that he wants to occupy this office. It's for the comfort and service of Ghanaians that he's interested in coming to office.
Okay. Now, yeah, the complaint has been that a lot of vehicles have been taken away, or as it were, allowed officials to take them away, and so on. Is this not an easy way, quick fix, to have these vehicles in so that you don't have those complaints, or whilst you look forward to resolve those issues? They are not this, yeah, they are not.
Yeah. So two things. I go back to my favorite topic, rent seeking. I mean, buy cars so we can take the ones that are available, or buy these cars, then as Dr. hinted elsewhere somehow, we can enrich our own. Because we know politicians at the end of their term, or getting to the end of, somebody will come. Have you forgotten how I helped you in this last campaign? You never gave me any contract. So what do? These things can be done. And it is not peculiar to just one government. So maybe these new ones and subsequent ones can take a cue. And I'm saying that until we really become very serious with rent seeking and spoliation as a very serious issue, it's a very nice way of glorifying corruption, because it's always difficult to identify the corruption in it. But the closest is the issue of conflict of interest and unjust enrichment, and the lack of necessity for that item. I can't see the necessity for these items. But of course, people are also talking about, perhaps ordinarily, I wouldn't see anything wrong with either the system. It's not to the president, the presidency, office of the first lady. Ordinarily, I think it should be normal. But when you have a system that is lacking resources for urgent and immediate basic needs of the people, and we can afford about 9 million, whilst, I mean, nurses who have just been employed cannot get their pay, or that they cannot be employed because there is no money to pay them and all those things. That is what...
That's why I said you can't win this debate in the streets.
That is why it is going, feeding into it. So somebody will say that, oh, even some presidents in the UK, they use bicycles and things like that. It may be all right for them. So I'm saying that here, my best bet is that if this one is finally confirmed, of course, JoyNews can confirm another, but if it's finally confirmed by official sources, I mean, we are waiting. Number one, I think that this government should do as
a service. You think leaking of these documents are not by official sources?
No.
You intercepted.
I haven't said that. But then, subject to confirmation from official sources. I'm saying that you do us a favor if you publish the transition report, certified report. It's been too long.
You see, the outgone government, the past government doesn't want to get into this discussion. So you will discover that they don't want to be speaking about it. But behind, privately, they will tell you, they'll give you information that it is not true that the incoming government then was unaware. And that they will say that actually the president, it is his taste. They asked what sort of vehicles he wanted, and he said Mercedes, and that's how come that brand is being brought.
But they are saying this behind the scenes.
If the government,
it has no credibility. If you can't say it publicly,
was aware right from the beginning after Nana Addo was declared as the winner, it will reflect in the report.
So publish it, because we are entitled to it.
The claim is that this was done after he visited the Flagstaff House together with his team, and they had discussions and all of that.
Well, it's up to them.
I mean, the amount involved here is very huge,
right?
And I believe that it will be in somewhere if it was actually put out.
Okay, don't you think by then it would have been too late to?
It will even reflect in the budget, or there's a source traced to the consolidated fund.
Clara,
should be document to that effect.
Do you find, like others do, that there's some impropriety? Why would you want to be interested in even leading that purchase when you have just 8 days to get out of office?
Samson, I'll look at it under two heads, in terms of the law and then in terms of policy.
Okay.
Now, in terms of the law, there's the mere fact that even if the contract was executed a day to the president leaving office.
Or midnight.
Or midnight. It's no less binding on the state because of that. What would make it binding on the state would depend on whether the processes required for such a contract to be entered into were complied with. So like the questions that Kweku asked earlier on, the number of days for the execution is irrelevant for legal purposes. What is important is whether the processes for such a contract were complied with. From the reports that I have, there's not enough information to draw a conclusion one way or the other in terms of that. Now, the second thing is a matter of policy. Like I said, our law allows even the midnight. He's still the president. He can commit the contract, the country. So as a matter of policy...
Some of the contrary view of when the power evaporates from the president then.
So as a matter of policy, if we want to agree that certain things shouldn't be done in certain way, I think the various politicians can discuss that, and Parliament may want to take a look at it. But in terms of this like Kweku said, for me, it wasn't... This was something for the state. He was leaving, he wasn't going to benefit from it, and all of that. So there's not enough information. I can understand that politicians will do politics one way or the other, but if you're going to look at the facts of it, there's not sufficient information to conclude one way or the other.
Interesting.
Yeah, maybe government should be talking too.
Government should be talking. Yeah, they attempted to, but it looks like they don't want to.
No, he was not speaking for government. Was he speaking for government?
He's been saying my government.
But for the ruling party, perhaps.
Interesting. And you've been listening and watching Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis show. And my guests have been Abdul Malik Kubako, editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, Clara Berry Kasati. She's a lawyer and teaches the law. Dr. Poku Edusei is also a lawyer, teaches the law. He's chairman, MPP Elections Review Committee, whilst the NDC is just finished with its review as to what led to the loss and how to, correct or right the wrongs. The MPP is also assessing how it won.
And how it will win again.
And how it will win again, according to Kekubako. And Yao Pong is also a lawyer and teaches the law at the Central University. Now, we have just some 5 minutes to go, but I think that I was going to see if I could read some messages, but I think that there was one issue that we had actually tabled, but we didn't get to discuss. If Koko would like to say something briefly about the bond issue and the alleged involvement of the Council of State, that the Council of State had, sought to, as it were, compromise the minority MPs to get them off. To stop this bond issue.
This is an ambush of a sort, because it was part of your draft issue.
Okay, it had been
but when
dropped.
They confirmed it was dropped. So I asked the producer, let me just make this. I asked the producer that, look, this is very important. Why are you dropping it? But his explanation made sense to me. He said the minister had been summoned to Parliament Wednesday, and the idea was that, look, why don't you wait for the Wednesday one so that we combine it to the response to Shraj coming Saturday. It made sense to me.
Okay, it does.
Otherwise, tell you, I read a response. Comprehensive annihilation of all those allegations.
From the National House of Chiefs, you mean?
No, from the minister.
The minister.
Okay.
And I've also cited minutes of the Council of State, their encounter with the minority. There was no discussion of the 2.5 billion. And indeed, there was no official request from the Council of State for a meeting. One particular person who is a member of the Council of State, who has NDC sympathies, indeed is a Greater Accra representative of the Council of State, on the Council of State. He was the one who went doing all this maneuvering and ended up having splash on his face. Next time I come here, I have it here, but because that's just the minutes, I will read the entire minutes for you. It's 4 pages, and then you will see why a lot of distortions were put out there.
Which minutes are you referring to?
The Council of State's minutes, that encounter that occurred. I have the full minutes. I intercepted it. It wasn't leaked. And if I had time, I would have read the whole thing for you. And then you will see the real facts. as to how the thing came about, what happened, who did
Unless
what.
that you have packed it. Would have
Yes,
taken
I've
some
packed it, but the food's in here.
Right. Anyway, we'll look at this issue next week, God willing. So we should be able to deal with it extensively. And as you know,
but with such high
there's a reply by the finance minister to the Shraj petition and all of that. We'll put all of that together. Yes.
Yes, I think they're consistent with the promise given us by the Council of State. I think they are being active, at least openly, so that we know that. And I read the communique that is sourced to them. Very insightful. And I think that that's the way to go. There's no more need to do things in secrecy.
And in fact, it's not new. They engaged the previous administration. There is evidence to show that Council of State engaged the Ministry of Education on so many things. And other sector ministries. These are documented.
So, I mean, as consistent as it could be, then they should let us know about the content of even this except where it relates to national security.
Yes. All right. What did you want to say? You've got some.
Well, what I intend to say is that it means that having persons who don't believe in the ideology of the government on the Council of State, we must also watch.
No, he won an election.
No. Yes, he won. I'm coming to that. I'm not saying that we can have dissensions on it, but if you are holding such high office, there's no need for you to distort facts and put your institution.
But that is not to justify that other people.
No.
We should rather need people
we need them so that we can have competing views as well.
Okay.
But such persons must guard their approaches. Otherwise, you'll be undermining your own institution.
All right.
Very high
Thank you very much. You've been watching and listening to Newsfile. I'm Samson Ladi Anyanini, and this show has been on your Joy News channel on Multi TV. It was on Joy 99.7 and Love 99.5 in Kumasi, and was all over the country and all over the world as well. Thank you very much. My outfit, as always, is by Latida. God willing, next week we'll bring you yet another interesting edition of the show.